Hey, good morning, guys. How's it going? you, People are pretty wild nowadays, don't you think? That's how wild people are. I think it's pretty like wild. So, say you're vulnerable. You try to be vulnerable. Express yourself about the things that you went through, and the things that you had to heal from. You're in like a group meeting or something, trying to like work through your stuff and be vulnerable. You're trying to be vulnerable. You wish other people would be vulnerable, but maybe they're not, but you're like, I'm going to be vulnerable. I'm not afraid. But then instead of it's crazy because instead of people being like, oh man, I'm sorry you went through that, and understanding that what you went through was hard, and being like, man, trying to relate to it, and people will try to use your vulnerabilities against you. They'll whatever you went through, you can explain that, oh, I had to heal from narcissistic abuse, people taking advantage of me financially, I all this stuff that I went through, that I'm the other, people should hear that and be like, oh man, okay, obviously I don't want that anymore, right? I'm not gonna, I had to heal from that. And so instead of people understanding that and being like, oh man, I can relate to that, they'll try to do the same thing that other people did to you. You're being vulnerable about how people mistreated you and took advantage of you and stuff, and then they try to do the same thing. They're like, oh man, let me try that on that person. That's crazy, man. Don't you think that that's wild? Obviously, if I'm saying that my energy was being drained, and I had to heal from that, I had to distance myself from that, obviously I'm not gonna want to go through that again. Why would you try to do that to that same thing? I mean, it's kind of crazy, but yeah, people would try to do, it's I think people are a little bit sadistic or something. It's I would want, don't, by hearing that, you would be like, oh, okay, I want the opposite of that now, or at least, autonomy and stuff, not getting into codependent dynamics, and, so, and also I learned from all that, right? I'm explaining that I'm being vulnerable, that I went through that, and so I got manipulated, people were conniving and trifling and all this stuff, with me, and so you think that you're going to be able to do that to me, that same thing that they did to me? These people were master manipulators. They were really good at it. They had me tricked for a long time, and I had to heal from it. I almost died. God saved me from that. I had to get out. I was my energy was being drained. I probably might have unalived myself at some point, and so now you're going to try to do the same thing. You think you're some clever manipulator, then you can, no, I see through all that stuff real fast. You think you're so smart, and you're going to get your ego bruised, when you try to do that same thing and try to control me and some guy, it's it's crazy, man. Don't you think that that's kind of crazy? I didn't realize that was going to happen. I thought that being vulnerable would be oh, okay, people were good, but yeah, you can't even be vulnerable. It seems it's people are take that as oh, they mentally clock it to oh yeah, I'm gonna do the same thing to him, that I'm gonna put him into this same dynamic, this it's crazy. I think that people are just, it's oh, okay, I don't know, they're just oh, maybe I could do that same thing to them. I don't know. You're gonna have to try it on somebody else. You think you could do it to me? I got, I healed from that. I don't need to be in any social groups. I don't need to be chasing anything. I don't need, I'm not gonna I'm not stupid anymore. I know to not get into any kind of dynamics. I'll stay alone for the rest of my life to avoid any of these kind of dynamics where I'm being drained and it's codependency, somebody's taking advantage or manipulating me in some kind of way using deception. Like, I don't need to, like, I'm not gonna like be the one. I'm not gonna just be in some kind of friend group, just to have friends so that I can be the one people make fun of and laugh at and treat like shit, just so I can have friends. Like, no, I'll stay by myself. You might see me as that guy or something, and like, oh, you're just that guy. This is what your life has to be, but like, no, I have the choice. I can just be like, no, I'll just walk away. No, I'm not gonna deal with your ass. Just sorry. And they get so crazy. Like, they feel like they have to like that. I can't be like, I can't do that. Like, I can't just walk away and just live my life. Like, I have to be tethered to them in some kind of way. Like, because they don't know how to do that themselves. They don't, they feel like they always have to have a group or somebody that, they can't be by themselves. And so they can't sit at a restaurant by themselves. They're embarrassed or something, they can't handle somebody making fun of them or laughing at them for being the guy by himself, like, oh, look at that loser, so they don't understand what they think, that like I have that same kind of like insecurity or something. Like, no. I like, I like being by myself. It's gonna, I'll have friends and be with people, but it's not, not to sacrifice and to let them just drain my energy, it's like, okay, I'm going to be with people that can respect me and, come at me in the right way, where they're not trying to use me and put me into some kind of role and dynamic. I'm not, I'm not doing that. So, I don't know. I think just sometimes people are just sadistic. I think they just get some kind of like, pleasure. They get that little evil smile and stuff when they feel like, it's like they get some kind of dopamine hit out of it, if they can try to like, get to you emotionally or something, yeah, it's crazy. Wow, people are wild nowadays. You can't be vulnerable. And they always would say like, be vulnerable and stuff, but it's like, man, okay, so I guess, I just have to deal with the stuff with God, like people they're not gonna like, feel for me or empathize or something. They're gonna use that to try to take advantage. They're just be like, okay, like, it's crazy. Like, people can't, don't you feel that same kind of way? Like, don't you understand? Like, have you never gone through something where somebody played you or took advantage of you and made you feel like, that you were, right? You should empathize. Where's the empathy? No. People, they don't have any emotional, they don't know, they haven't like, I think their ego gets in the way of it or something. Like, they can't like, they just feel like that they're like cooler than you or something, and oh, you're just you're the person that goes through that, but I don't go through that, I'm the one that makes fun of people, and it fits in with the groups and stuff. Anyways, have a good day. Pretty long one today. Nice.